This might be a little different from the usual stuff you come across. Sure, there are plenty of stories out there about people getting cheated on, caught off guard by someone they trusted. But my story? Well, it's not exactly that simple. See, I wasn't just the guy who got screwed over. In the end, I ended up doing some screwing over myself. But before you jump to conclusions and think I'm just another jerk, let me clarify something. I didn't get here all on my own. I was pushed, manipulated, and basically coerced into doing what I did. It wasn't all on me. But, hey, let's rewind a bit. We have to start somewhere, right? I figured giving you a little background wouldn't hurt before I dive into the chaos. For starters, I'm just a regular guy. Not a genius. Not some movie hero. Just an ordinary guy doing a regular job, trying to get by, and maintaining some sort of balance in life. Drama? Not my thing. I like to keep things steady and predictable. That's just who I am. Always have been. My name? Doesn't really matter. But my wife, well, her name's Sophie. Now, Sophie, she's a whole different story. She was the type of woman who could light up a room the moment she walked in. It wasn't that she was the most stunning woman in the world, though she was definitely beautiful. It was more about the way she carried herself. Confident, quick-witted, sharp as a tack when it came to conversation. She had this electric energy about her that made people gravitate towards her. Even when we first met, I couldn't help but be amazed at how effortlessly people warmed to her. It was like she had this magnetic pull. And who could blame them? She was funny, charming, and had a laugh that was so contagious it could turn your worst day around. Her sense of humor? It was something else entirely. She had this uncanny ability to roast someone with a single line, tearing them down, and yet they'd still laugh. It was like magic. People loved her for it. Her friends, our family, even my own buddies. And honestly, I did too at first. But over time, that humor? Yeah, it started to wear thin. It's hard to keep laughing when every joke seems to come at your expense. See, in our relationship, Sophie was the funny one. Me? Not so much. I was the grounded one, the guy who made sure everything stayed balanced. And for a while, that dynamic worked. She was the spark, and I kept the fire from burning out of control. But her humor, well, it ended up coming back to bite me in a way I never saw coming. It pulled off one hell of a cruel joke on me. Something so twisted, so messed up, that I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived through it. And you probably won't either. Not until you hear what went down. It started off like any other evening. Nothing special. I came home from work, completely wiped out, like always. The grind was starting to get to me, but that's life, right? You work. You come home. You eat. You sleep. You repeat. But that night, when I walked in, the house smelled warm, inviting. Dinner was already on the table. It was something Italian, I think. She knew I liked pasta, so she'd make it on nights like this when she was in a good mood. The candles were lit. Sophie had a thing for creating a nice atmosphere. And there she was, smiling like everything was perfect. Like nothing was wrong. We sat down to eat. Talked like we always did, just the usual stuff. I asked her about her day. She asked me about mine. She laughed at something stupid, and I found myself thinking, there it is, that damn laugh. It all felt normal. I wasn't paying much attention to her mood. I was too focused on scarfing down my food and shaking off the stress of the day. But slowly, the tone of the evening shifted. It was subtle at first, just a little change in the way she was sitting, a slight shift in her voice. I noticed her leaning back in her chair, her eyes narrowing just a bit. And then, out of nowhere, she dropped it on me. You know, she said, her voice casual, like she was commenting on the weather. I've been feeling a little tired of us lately. I looked up, confused, frozen with my fork in midair. Tired? I repeated, like I hadn't heard her right. What do you mean, tired? She sighed, almost like it was the most normal thing in the world to say. I don't know. Things just feel kind of stale. Like we're stuck, you know? I didn't know. I was completely blindsided. We weren't fighting. We weren't in some deep rut. At least, I didn't think we were. Sure, we had our routines, but I thought we were solid. Married for 7 years. You'd think we'd have figured it out by now. Apparently, I was wrong. So wrong. Then she hit me with the real bombshell. I slept with someone, she said deadpan. No emotion, no remorse. It was like she was telling me she'd picked up some groceries or changed her hair color. It made me feel what? Better? But then, she casually added, don't worry though. I'm not going to do it again. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My brain just shut down. Everything around me went quiet, and all I could hear were those words echoing in my head like some sick joke that hadn't quite landed. Did she really just say that? Did she just casually tell me she cheated on me, right there at the dinner table? My throat went dry, and my grip on the fork tightened so much that I felt the metal start to bend under the pressure. But I didn't care about the fork. I couldn't take my eyes off her, desperately searching for any sign that she was joking, that this was just another one of her stupid pranks. But there was nothing in her eyes, just cold, blank indifference, as if she hadn't just blown my entire world apart. She stood up, walked over to me, and kissed me on the lips. A quick, meaningless kiss. "Good night," she said softly, like we hadn't just had the most destructive conversation of my life. No more words. She turned and walked away, heading to the bedroom like nothing had changed. And there I was sitting completely frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think straight. My eyes dropped to my hands, realizing I had completely mangled the fork in my grip. My chest tightened with a pressure I couldn't shake, and all I could feel was the rage building up inside me. But instead of storming after her, demanding an explanation, I stayed where I was, fists clenched tight. My mind was spinning in a blur, but one thought was crystal clear: revenge. She thought she could just throw that bomb at me, kiss me, and waltz off to bed like nothing happened. Like I wasn't supposed to react. Oh, I was going to react, all right. I was going to make her regret ever speaking those words. But how was I supposed to know this was just some twisted joke? How was I supposed to know that her sense of humor had gone this far? After she kissed me and walked away so nonchalantly, I felt my rage boil over. I couldn't just sit there, not with my mind spiraling. Without a second thought, I grabbed my jacket, threw it on, and stormed out of the house. I needed air. I needed to get away. But more than that, I needed someone to talk to. So I reached for my phone. I thought about calling my best friend, the guy I usually turn to when everything goes to hell. But as I scrolled through my contacts, my fingers stopped on another name: Rachel, Sophie's friend. But Rachel wasn't just some random acquaintance. I'd known her longer than I'd known Sophie. We used to run in the same circles before Sophie and I ever got together. And if I'm being honest, there had always been something between Rachel and me. Nothing serious, but I could tell she liked me back then. Before Sophie, it was one of those situations where the timing was never right. But I had a feeling her feelings never really went away. So, without thinking too much about it, I dialed her number. She picked up after a couple of rings, sounding surprised but not in a bad way. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice casual, like it had been forever since we last talked. "Can you meet me? I need to talk," I blurted out, not even thinking about what I was saying. "At the bar near your place." There was a brief pause, but she didn't press for details. "Sure, I'll be there in 10, she replied. No questions, no interrogation. It was like she knew something was wrong. I jumped in my car and drove to the bar, my mind still racing from the mess at home. When I pulled up, I spotted her immediately. Rachel was already sitting at a booth, nursing a drink. She glanced up as I walked in, her eyebrows raised in mild surprise. "Where's Sophie?" she asked, the question hanging in the air. I sat down, avoiding the answer at first. "She's not coming," I said flatly. That got her attention. She leaned in slightly, her face shifting from casual to concerned. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." We ordered a couple of drinks, and after a few sips, the words just started spilling out of me. I told her everything. How Sophie had dropped the bomb that she cheated, and how she acted like it was no big deal. At first, Rachel didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, the shock, the disbelief. But the more she looked at me, the more she realized I wasn't lying. I could see the pieces falling into place in her mind. We kept drinking, and the conversation got heavier with each round. The alcohol dulled the edge of my anger, but it was still there, simmering beneath the surface. By the time the bartender called last call, we were both pretty buzzed. Out of nowhere, Rachel leaned closer and said, "I've got another bottle of wine at my place if you want to keep this going." I didn't even think twice. I just nodded, and we left together. Her apartment wasn't far from the bar. We stumbled inside, laughing about something that's probably lost to me now. But the moment we cracked open that bottle of wine, I knew exactly where the night was heading. The look in her eyes, intense, focused. I wasn't going to stop it. And honestly, I didn't want to. After a few more glasses, things escalated quickly. 1 minute, we were talking, and the next, we were on her couch. Hands everywhere, lips locked. And in that moment, I made a decision I hadn't planned on. I pulled out my phone and started filming. Not the whole thing, just a few clips here and there. Rachel noticed, of course. At first, she wasn't having it. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice a little slurred, but still sharp. She pushed my hand away. "It's just for me," I said quickly, trying to reassure her. "No one else will ever see it, I promise. It'll be fine." She hesitated, but in the end she caved. Alcohol, desire, and years of unresolved tension can make people do things they wouldn't otherwise. "I guess so," she muttered. I kept the camera rolling, capturing just enough to satisfy whatever messed up part of me thought this was a good idea. When it was all over and I was sitting there, I told her I had to go. She looked at me, disappointment flickering in her eyes. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice tinged with a little hurt. "Yeah, I should," I said, already feeling the weight of what I had just done. "It's late." She wanted me to stay, I could tell, but I wasn't about to spend the night in her bed. This wasn't going to be a regular thing, and I sure as hell wasn't going to make my life more complicated by sticking around. So I left. I called a taxi, and as I sat in the back seat, my mind was spinning from both the booze and the sex. There was this weird mix of satisfaction and guilt bubbling up inside me. I had done it. I had gotten my revenge, but did it make me feel better? No, not at all. If anything, I just felt empty, like the night had filled a temporary void that wasn't going to fix anything in the long run. When I got home, it was late. The house was dark, and Sophie was probably asleep in the bedroom, completely unaware of what had just gone down. I stood in the hallway for a moment, my brain racing, trying to make sense of everything. Finally, without a word, I made my way to the couch and crashed there for the night. The next morning, the tension in the air was palpable. You know the feeling, one of those heavy silences that weighs on you like a cloud, telling you something's off? Yeah, that's what I walked into. I tried to shake it off as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half expecting Sophie to be all sunshine and smiles, acting like last night never happened. But nope. She was already sitting at the table, her eyes narrowed and her lips pressed together in a thin, tight line as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Just sipped her coffee, but I could tell she was pissed. Just not the raging kind of pissed. More like the simmering, slow burn kind of anger. You could feel she was just waiting for the right moment to explode. I sat down across from her, pretending not to notice the heat of her stare boring into me. We ate in silence for a few minutes before she finally spoke, her voice thick with irritation. "So," she dragged out the word, "where the hell were you last night? You came home so damn late, and you didn't even come to bed." Her eyes were fixed on me, waiting for an explanation, but I wasn't in the mood for her interrogation. I knew I had to answer, but this time, I wasn't going to lie. After all, she had started all of this. I took a deep breath and said as calmly as I could, "I was out." She didn't seem satisfied with that, though. Her eyes narrowed even more, and she set her phone down, giving me her full attention. "Out? Out doing what? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were up to something." I glanced at her, letting a small smirk tug at the corner of my mouth. "Yeah, I was thinking about us." She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "How?" "I'm a little tired of our relationship," I said casually, though we both knew it had been like that for a while. The tension in the room thickened, and I let it hang there for a moment before adding, "I guess I did something about it." Her expression shifted, confusion written all over her face. "Wait, what? You're tired? Since when?" I shrugged, keeping my tone relaxed. "I guess for a while now." "And last night," she pressed. "What did you do about it?" I paused for effect, watching the confusion flicker in her eyes. "I cheated," I said flatly. Her smirk faded, but she didn't lose her composure entirely. Her eyes searched mine, trying to figure out if I was joking. "Oh, really? You cheated on me? With who?" I took another breath, knowing the bomb I was about to drop. No, not some random girl. It was with Rachel. Her face went from disbelief to utter shock. She stared at me, her mouth hanging open as she tried to process what I had just said. "Wait, what? Rachel? My Rachel? Are you serious right now?" I didn't flinch. Yeah, I slept with her last night. She blinked a few times, then burst out laughing. But this wasn't her usual laugh. It was nervous, almost hysterical. Oh my God, you're kidding. Rachel? Really? That's your big lie? What kind of joke is this? I didn't say anything. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. I hit play and held it up for her to see. At first, she just stared at the screen, still smiling, still convinced this was some elaborate prank. But as Rachel's face appeared on the screen, her smile faltered. Then, the unmistakable sounds of what had just happened filled the room, and Sophie's expression changed completely. Her face drained of color, her eyes widening in disbelief. Before I could even react, she slammed her hand to her mouth, then knocked my phone out of my hand with such force it skittered across the table. "You bastard!" she yelled, her voice cracking, standing up so suddenly that her chair clattered to the floor. "You're out of your mind! You slept with Rachel!" I jumped to my feet, my own anger flaring up, matching the fury in her eyes. "Oh, now I'm the asshole, huh? What about you? You cheated on me first. You don't get to act like the victim here." She shot me a look that could have burned a hole through stone, her chest rising and falling as her breath quickened. "I didn't cheat on you, you idiot. It was a joke. A joke. Do you hear me?" I froze, the words hitting me like a slap across the face. "A joke? What the hell was she talking about?" "A joke," I repeated, completely thrown off. "You were joking?" She threw her hands in the air in frustration, pacing in tight circles like a caged animal. "Yes, I was joking," she snapped. "It was all just a mess with you. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was going to tell you once you calmed down. But no, you had to storm off like a maniac before I could explain." The room felt like it was spinning around me, my mind struggling to catch up. "A joke," I muttered, barely able to process it. "You were joking?" "Yes," she screamed, her eyes filling with tears. "I was fucking joking. I never cheated on you. But you," she pointed at me, voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You went and slept with Rachel and filmed it. How the hell do you think I'm supposed to react to that?" It felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. Everything I thought I understood, every ounce of anger and justification I'd built up inside, crumbled in an instant. I stood there, open-mouthed, heart hammering in my chest, realizing just how completely I'd messed up. "Sophie," I whispered, reaching out to her, feeling the weight of it all crash down on me. "I didn't know." She cut me off, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to hear it," she said sharply. "You've done enough damage. You ruined everything, you asshole." Tears streamed down her face now, her pain obvious. "You slept with my best friend. How do you expect me to forgive that?" I had nothing to say. What could I say? I stood there, dumbfounded, the guilt flooding me. I didn't know," I repeated, but it felt empty, like a poor excuse. She shook her head, retreating from me, her body tense, arms crossed. "Just go. I don't want to see you right now." She turned away, storming to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. The sound of the lock clicking shut was like a final nail in the coffin. And then I heard it, her sobs muffled but unmistakable. I stood there, feeling like I had just been hit by a freight train. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to apologize. But what could I do? I'd gone too far. I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As much as I hated to admit it, the damage was done, and there was no turning back. The guilt gnawed at me, but so did the anger. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had set all this in motion with her ridiculous joke. I grabbed my jacket, not even thinking, and walked out the door. I had to go to Rachel's place. I needed to explain everything. I needed to tell her the mess I'd just made of everything. When I got to her apartment, Rachel answered the door, her face lighting up with surprise when she saw me. But that expression quickly faded, and I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I launched right into it. Sophie's joke, the video, everything. As I spoke, I saw Rachel's confusion turn to anger. "You're a piece of shit," she said, her voice low and dangerous, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You set me up. You didn't tell me this was some sick revenge plot. What the hell are you talking about?" I shot back, frustration boiling up in me. You agreed to this. You knew what we were doing. Yeah, I agreed because I thought it was just between us. She started pacing the living room, hands flailing around in the air. I didn't know you were using me to get back at Sophie. Do you even realize what you've done? I've lost my best friend because of you. I clench my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. It's not just my fault, Rachel. You were there. You knew what was happening. You're just as guilty. She stopped pacing, spinning around to face me with a glare that could cut through steel. You really are something else, you know that? I've loved you since university. She spat, her words thick with bitterness. And this is how you repay me? Rachel's voice was quiet, but the hurt in it hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea she still felt that way about me. Not like that. For a moment, the anger between us faded, replaced by an awkward, heavy silence. We both just sat there, on her couch, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of everything that had just been said. A few minutes passed, and then Rachel let out a sigh. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I'm going to try calling Sophie, she said, her voice almost resigned. Maybe I can explain. Maybe I can make her understand what happened. She dialed, but each call went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, but Sophie wasn't answering. Desperation started to seep into her voice as the seconds ticked by. She's not picking up, Rachel muttered, shaking her head. I don't know if she ever will. I felt it too, that sinking feeling in my stomach, like I was falling into an abyss, and no matter what I did, I couldn't pull myself out. Eventually, I left Rachel's place and went back home, hoping that somehow, maybe I could fix this. Maybe I could apologize and make things right with Sophie. But when I walked through the door, the first thing she said to me was, I already called a lawyer. She didn't even look at me. Her voice was cold, distant, like she had already made up her mind. I'm filing for divorce. My stomach dropped. It was like the ground had been pulled out from under me, and I was free falling, with no end in sight. Sophie, please, I started, but she didn't want to hear it. There's nothing more to say. She cut me off, her back turned to me as she folded laundry like it was just another day. You made your choice, she said, her voice hard. I'm making mine. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to think of something, anything to say. But the truth was, I had no words. I had completely lost her, and I knew there was no going back. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to Rachel's place. When she opened the door, I didn't waste time with explanations. Can I stay with you for a while? I asked. She hesitated, her eyes scanning my face, full of frustration and doubt. I don't think that's a good idea, she said at first, crossing her arms. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. I had dragged her into this mess too. She had her own battles to fight now. But just as I was about to turn and walk away, defeated, she called me back. Wait, she said softer this time. All right, fine. You can stay, but just for a bit. This whole thing, it's a lot. So, I stayed with Rachel. The divorce dragged on for a month. And during that time, our entire social circle knew about everything. Sophie made sure of it. She told everyone, every little detail, and in the process, our friends picked sides. Some stayed neutral, but most sided with her. And honestly, I didn't blame them. During that time, Rachel and I started spending more time together. What started as a mistake, something fueled by anger, betrayal, and bad decisions, slowly turned into something else. We tried to make sense of it all, to give what had happened a purpose. But the more we tried, the more we realized that something wasn't right. There was a gap between us, a chasm that neither of us knew how to bridge. Rachel still had feelings for me, sure, but now those feelings were tainted by everything that had come before. I felt it too, the guilt, the confusion. We tried to act like everything was fine, but it wasn't. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the weight of what we'd done. Every smile she gave me felt forced, like she was trying to convince both of us that this was okay. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't. I was stuck in this strange limbo, caught between the wreckage of my marriage and a fragile, broken connection with Rachel that didn't feel real. The harder we tried to move on, the clearer it became that neither of us could escape the mess we had made. We were out of place, both of us, and I had no idea where to go from here. Update. It's been a while since everything went down, and I figured I owed you all an update. After the chaos with Sophie, the divorce, and the mess with Rachel, I've had some time to reflect. I've grown a lot more than I ever thought I would. Honestly, Rachel and I, well, we tried. We tried to make it work for a while. We had a history, sure, and for a brief moment, it felt like maybe we could turn something ugly into something meaningful. But the reality? It wasn't right. We grew up together, in more ways than one. And for a while, we were each other's crutch when everything was falling apart. But you know what really killed it? Our so-called friends. The judgment. It was relentless. People love to point fingers like they're somehow above it all. They whispered behind our backs, made snide comments, and acted like we were some scandal they could gossip about at every opportunity. It wore us both down, and eventually, it became too much. Rachel and I ended up sitting down one night after another, one of those horribly awkward moments with one of her friends. We didn't even need to speak much to know what the deal was. We both realized this was done. We had too much baggage, too many people giving their 2 cents, making things worse. It wasn't some big dramatic fight or tearful breakup. We just knew it was over and let it go, for both of our sakes. Now, I'm in a completely different place, both physically and mentally. I made the decision to leave. I'm packing up and getting ready to head out of this town. Leave the memories and everything else behind. It feels strange, but deep down, I know it's the right choice. I need to escape the mess from everyone who just keeps reminding me of what happened. I need to start fresh. I'm not looking to run from myself, but I need to rebuild, to start over. No more judgment from the people who think they know everything. No more carrying around the weight of the past. It's a little terrifying, I'm not going to lie, but there's something about the idea of a new beginning that gives me hope. Maybe this time I'll finally figure out who I really am, without all those stupid mistakes following me around. I know it won't be easy. Nothing ever is. But it's a step forward, and honestly, for the first time in a long time, I think I'm ready for it. Here's to new beginnings. Update. Well, here I am already settling into a new city. It's funny how quickly life can change when you finally make up your mind to leave the past behind. I found a job quickly, too. I'm working in an office now, doing something completely different from what I used to. It's not glamorous, just basic admin work with a little project management thrown in, but it's steady. And after everything I've been through, normalcy feels like a relief. I clock in, do my job, and clock out. No drama, no stress, just the daily grind. And for now, that's enough. But, of course, life is a way of throwing curveballs. There's this girl at work. Let's call her Clara. She's the type of woman who walks into a room and immediately lights it up without even trying. It's not over the top. There's just something about her. She's got this quiet confidence, you know? And she's smart as hell, doesn't take crap from anyone. I find myself looking her way more than I should, and I think she's noticed, but I haven't done anything about it. I mean, how could I? I'm still carrying around all this baggage from my past, the divorce, the fallout with Rachel. All of it still lingers in the back of my mind. I feel guilty, like I don't even deserve to try again. Part of me knows I have to make peace with everything before I can even think about moving forward with someone else. So here I am, stuck in this weird limbo. I really like Clara, but I don't know how to tell her. What if I mess it up again? What if I'm still too broken to make it work? So, I'm asking you all, what would you do? Would you take the risk or wait it out until you're sure the past won't screw things up? Anyway, I just wanted to check in and say thanks for sticking with me. Your support has meant a lot more than I can express. I'm still figuring things out, but it feels good knowing there are people out there who have my back. Here's hoping I can make something good out of all this. Update. Time for another update, and this one's a bit different from the last. I'm in a relationship with Clara now, and it's going better than I expected. Honestly, I took my time with it, didn't rush into anything because I wanted to make sure I was ready. I've been working with a psychologist, really putting in the effort to process everything I've been through, especially with Sophie and Rachel. It hasn't been easy, but I'm starting to feel like it's worth it. I realized I can't keep punishing myself for the past. Yeah, I made mistakes. I messed up. It took me a long time to come to terms with it, but I'm finally starting to feel like I'm moving forward, like I deserve a chance to try again. And Clara, she's been amazing. So patient, so understanding. She knows all about my past. And while I was terrified to tell her, she didn't judge me. That's rare. One thing that hasn't changed is that I never really developed a sense of humor. Maybe it's just not in the cards for me. But I've learned to live with it. We laugh about it sometimes, especially since Clara has that lightness about her that I admire. Maybe that's enough for both of us. I just wanted to let you all know how things are going. I'm in a better place now, and it feels good to finally say that. Thanks again for sticking by me. Wishing you all the best, and good luck wherever life takes you.